Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's an honor to be here today at CPAC, Texas, presiding this panel with such remarkable guests. Today, we'll be talking about an issue that might be bigger than you think. But before we begin, I would like to ask our audience how many of you guys feel that what you see on the news is not objective. Let me see. Well, yeah, I believe most of us identify with that, and that's why we're here today. So as we know, destroying free press has been a strategic move taken by the left. Newspapers, radios, broadcasters, and internet media have been spreading liberal disinformation and propaganda by using distorted coverage, half-truths, denial, and other means. So let's get to it. And let me start with you, Jason. Yeah, you. You'll be the first. So today, we're all suffering a spike in gas and food prices, as well as an increase in the cost of living. Inflation is the worst it's the worst it's ever been, and all of a sudden, all of this is Putin's fault, or at least that's what the government and most media say. What do you think is actually causing this crisis, and why is the media not talking about it?
Well, the media is not talking about it because they generally push forward policies and politicians who are responsible for all the problems that we're currently experiencing. I think when they generally take ownership when things go right, and they love it. The media loves to say, I told you so, but when, of course, they're wrong, they will retreat, they won't talk about it, they will not be honest about it. And I think that's why, for the most part, across the board, you're seeing less interest in traditional or legacy media, less trust in it. And that's a shame, because obviously that's where I work, right? I would like everyone to be able to trust me and listen to me and hear my analysis. The difference is I provide analysis that's clearly editorial and not necessarily just the news, and I don't merge the two, except now everyone seems to be doing that. So you don't necessarily know if you're getting analysis or you're getting the news, which is, I think, how folks like CNN, over at CNN and MSNBC want it to be.
Of course. And speaking about the way some media handles information, Brendon, you resigned from your job as a news reporter because of the way producers handle information. Tell us about that turning point when you decided to walk away from your job security and embrace the challenge of starting a new media outlet from scratch. What is Brendon thinking through that process?
Yeah, so I worked for a CBS affiliate in Florida, and right off the bat, I was doing county politics, and where I was based, we had a really good Republican board of commissioners, and every single day, it was, how can we make this a controversy? How can we turn this story against the commissioners? How can we make this clickbait, essentially? And they spent millions in studies to show that this is what is going to get us clicks and ratings and make us money. They don't actually care about the truth. And then the other thing that I'm sure that you know, Karina, in your time in TV, what they do, all the local stations, and Jason, Devin, I'm sure you're pretty aware of this, is they just pull from CNN. They just pull stories from CNN, the producers, and then just throw it into their newscasts, and they don't check it. They just say, oh, it's CNN, it's good. And then that's on your local airwaves. It's crazy.
Yeah, it turns out they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we all work with the CNN news source.
Yeah.
That's the problem, pretty much. Mr. Nunes, I would like to touch on a topic you are very familiar with. For years, the media cultivated false accusations against former President Trump regarding the so-called Russian collusion. Today, we know that everything was made up. Can you elaborate on the impact of such accusations and the role the media played in spreading them?
Yeah, I think just to add what Brendon was talking about there, just so you understand, it wasn't just that CNN and the locals were pulling from CNN. You have to go farther up the food chain, and a lot of these stories are propagated by professionals who then feed them to people at the highest levels of our government, and it pushes it all the way down to the local level. And so they're essentially propaganda operations. And once you understand that, it's a lot more liberating. So, a lot of people ask, how did I deal with it? Well, once I knew at the beginning of the Russia hoax that people were in on this, I just cut them off. Like, I'm probably the only politician in history to cut off the entire news media unless you weren't fake, right? So, and I continue that to today. I don't talk to fake news organizations. And at Truth Social, as the CEO, we've had a few fake news organizations, actually almost every day we get slandered or defamed. And we have to just respond through lawyers. And I think that's the only way we can treat them. And ultimately, the only way this is going to get fixed is by number one, people joining true free speech platforms like Truth Social, but also at the same time, it's going to take the courts, it's going to take people bringing cases where you are defamed and having the law enforced. It's not legal in this country to slander people. So, that's what, that I've been working on that for a very, very long time, and I think there's a lot of brave people that are trying to do that, to hold the news media accountable, because we really do we understand the left in this country. We know the damages that they will do, but one of the things we need for a successful democratic republic is you have to have a free and open media that is not working for one party. And that's really what we have. 95% of the media are basically working for one party. I mean, it'd be no different than what you see in Russia or you see in China today, where they're taking the information directly from the propaganda machine. But then even worse than that, it's run through a funnel to everybody's phone, and it's poisoning America.
And Devin, it is important for people to make their voices heard in places where not everyone thinks the same. So what is Truth Social doing to attract people that aren't necessarily conservatives? And also, if their content does not align with conservative values, will they be censored?
Yeah, so what we're doing at Truth Social is we don't censor for political purposes. And I think also a key point is that when our timeline, we're not using an algorithm. So if you post something at 7 in the morning and Jason posts something at 7:05, you're going to see it in that order. And I think that's really an important key. And that's the way, by the way, that how Facebook and Twitter started. So, the key for us is to, obviously continue, to not censor for political purposes, but we also want a family-friendly atmosphere. So, if you're putting up pornography, it's just not allowed on our platform, right? And especially if it's illegal pornography. If you do excessive foul language, that sort of thing, that's stuff that we don't want to see. The way I look at this is, if you can see it on your average television set, that's what we want you to see on Truth Social.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about the crisis some cities are facing right now. Jason, defunding the police was a movement strongly publicized by some elected officials and media outlets. This led to the weakening of several police departments across the nation. What role did the media play, and do you believe they are to blame for the aftermath?
I mean, I don't think they're to blame for the aftermath. I think they're to blame for publicizing uncritically the voices that wanted to defund the police without explaining the consequences that would occur. I mean, it turns out, and I know this is going to be shocking breaking news, when you defund police and you don't have enough cops out there, bad guys take advantage. And they tend to commit more and more crimes. And you look at Seattle, for example, we're seeing a huge surge of violent crime. We're seeing assaults, we're seeing rapes, we're seeing murders in numbers that are historically, for us, unheard of, King County as a whole as well. And no one seems to be doing on the media side, with some exceptions, like myself. We're not actually talking about why this is happening, how to fix this, what caused this, and maybe a little bit of, I'm sorry, we were part of the problem. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Now Jason and I were arguing in the back over what the craziest city in America actually is. So he claims it's Seattle, but I think it still might be some places in California.
Well, Portland. So Portland is insane. Like, they, I think, are next level crazy. I think Seattle and LA, San Francisco's kind of right below them.
Maybe it's all the same. All the West Coast.
It really is. It's true. Yeah, DC is crazy.
So I'm from California. He's from Washington. Yeah, it's filled with.
You guys should move to Florida. That's the best.
We're here. We're safe today with all of you here this morning. We feel safe.
Yeah.
It's not Austin.
Well, speaking about crisis, city mayors of New York and DC used to promote undocumented immigration. Now they have hit the emergency button, as for the first time they are experiencing just a fraction of what southern states have been dealing with for decades. However, this double standard is not being questioned by the media. Why is this?
Because it's the truth. That's it. They just don't want the truth to get out there. Listen, what I've been doing at Florida's Voice, and Devin, when I saw that it was a funnel and that it is just pretty much propaganda, I had a 3-year contract with CBS. I was not even a year in, I quit. I didn't care. I didn't care the consequences. I walked in, I was like, I'm done. And that was it. So I started Florida's Voice, and our mantra was real simple. It's just report the facts the mainstream media ignore. And when you do that, that's when you see results. And because we've been doing that, we've exposed CRT and nonprofits that are in our school districts. We've gotten taxpayer dollars have been pulled from those organizations after we broke those stories. We exposed a child drag show at a church in Naples, Florida, and then it got picked up by Fox News and everyone, and because of it, nearly no one went. And when you simply do that, ask the questions that lead to the truth, that's when you see real results. And that's just what we're doing. We're not pundits, we're not editorialists, we're literally just reporters, and we need more of that.
You should call yourself mainstream media.
I'm trying to.
The idea that we call out mainstream media, to me, always kind of bugs me, because I am mainstream media. I'm on a mainstream television network. I'm on a mainstream radio station. I write for a mainstream website. We can define what mainstream media is, and we shouldn't allow left-wing outlets and fringe voices define what that is.
Well, hey, according to President Brendon, the word definition is fluid. It changes. So we're redefining words. Let's redefine mainstream.
And that's actually my next question for Mr. Nunes. Recently, we have seen an extreme shift in the way information is delivered by both people in power as well as in the media. Magically, a woman is no longer a woman. A recession is no longer a recession. And I could go on and on. Why is there such a strong push towards changing the meaning of fundamental terms, and how can we fight back?
Well, look, it all goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's all about propaganda. And so when you have a successful propaganda machine, you can control the masses of people. Until the propaganda leads to bad policies that don't work. So no matter how many press conferences they do, no matter how much of the, I prefer to call the fake news instead of the mainstream media, but they can fill people's heads and poison their minds by taking all that news, funneling it into your phone until you go in California and pay $6.50 for gasoline, or until you go into stores and they're short of supplies, or you go into, I mean, nearly everywhere I've been across America, and including in Florida, we spend a lot of time in Florida. We actually, Truth Social's headquartered in Florida. We actually call,
good choice.
Sarasota is now the free speech capital of the world. It's the home of both Truth Social and of Rumble.
Yep.
And we chose that specifically, you know, because we looked at all kinds of different states. Obviously, President Trump has an affinity for Florida because he has properties there and golf courses there. But we thought that Florida would be the best place specifically because it's, you know, it's one of the few places where you have a long history now of good governance there, right? And thankfully, you know, this is, you know, imagine what would have happened in Florida if DeSantis wouldn't have won, right? I mean, if President Trump, you know, he got involved in that primary, he got involved in that election, and it was really Republicans working together there for what? 20 years now, I think, where, and you see the difference. I mean, when you go to Florida, you just see the absolute difference. And I think that's the eye-opening for me is that you ask about, so all the propaganda in the world can't change if Jason and I are driving through San Francisco compared to driving through Tampa, Florida. I mean, it's night and day.
It's experience, right? I mean, in Seattle, there were a bunch of people who just flatly denied some of the reporting I was doing from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And they said that it was nonsense. And when I go on and I talk about homelessness, oh, you're overstating it. And then all of a sudden, folks came out of their COVID bubble in Seattle. And by the way, they're still alone jogging with a mask on. That's how serious they were taking it. But they go to a park and they realize that it's been completely taken over by homeless people. You're finding used needles everywhere. And then all of a sudden, it starts to click. Oh, okay, maybe I don't want to identify with the right-wing media, but he might have a point.
Well, and so you guys know, if you're not from California or from the West Coast, but you have to understand the seriousness of this homeless problem.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just, you guys all see this on in San Francisco, LA, the big cities, but even in my part of California, I mean, they're everywhere in even small towns, small communities. And what started 5 or 6 years ago as 1 or 2 people being across the street from my house, you know, the church said, oh, you know, we're a church, we want to help people, which I understand that. Well, 2 turned to 22, 22 turned to 200, and now even in my home city, There's hundreds and hundreds of homeless walking around everywhere.
It turns out when you have a fentanyl issue that it could actually lead to homelessness. And so maybe we shouldn't be decriminalizing drugs in Washington State, in California, and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, to our earlier point, we really do need to redefine what mainstream media is, because if we get a media that starts asking these questions, we're seeing it in Florida all the time. When we ask the real questions, I'm sure you see it, and it gets publicity and it puts the pressure on these politicians, that's when you see things starting to change. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I've been keeping a keen eye on Texas. I think you guys need more real journalism. Do you guys think we need more real journalism in Texas?
Yes.
I'm flirting with the idea of starting Texas's Voice because there's so much more that can be done. I think I should come to Texas. But there's so much more that can be done. It's just stories that are not being told.
Brendon, it's election year, a very important one. And as we know, the liberal media has an aggressive agenda. How should conservative media counter back?
Just tell you, they have to. So I'm really big at being the bigger person. I hate when we see people go out there and they're just trying to, like when they claim the conservative media and kind of berate the other side, just ask them simple questions. Ask them the simple questions. Hey, do you think it's appropriate for children to go to a drag show? Do you think it's appropriate that we should have our youth getting double mastectomies and being completely dismembered for gender-affirming care? Ask them those simple questions when you put it in the truth way, and they can't answer that. So I think that's going to turn a lot of voters to the other side when you just expose the truth with simple questions.
And get voters to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be able to book some of the Democrats who are in office because they know I might ask those kinds of questions. We have some Democrats who come on, and I'm grateful for it, but there are a lot who definitely won't. And so that's kind of on you guys.
Yep.
When you go to town halls, when you engage with various candidates, ask these questions. And if you can, obviously record it, because then we can actually expose what it is they truly believe when they're talking to the voter that they think they're going to convince by saying, we support abortion up until the baby's first cry, which is a position that some Democrats actually take. But they won't say it that way.
Insane.
And you know what we also need? Devin, I bet you can definitely gloat about the work that Kayleigh McEnany did as press secretary. Governor Ron DeSantis, America's governor, has an awesome press secretary, Christina Pushaw, in the Department of Health as well, Jeremy Redfern. So a reporter reached out to them and were like, hey, we need some, we're doing a story on gender-affirming care. And the press secretary for the Department of Health returns back and he goes, wait, what is gender-affirming care? Because that's a fake word. Do you mean actually double mastectomies and stuff?
It's not affirming, it's changing.
Yeah, so we need more press secretaries, too, that can push back and just keep getting the truth out there. It's been really effective in Florida.
We're kind of running out of time, so let's get a little bit more personal. All of you have an important role in the media. So I would like to know, starting with you, Devin, what makes you wake up early in the morning? What are you after? And what would you like to be remembered for?
Well, you know, that's a great question, because every morning I get up and I look at Truth Social and you see the difference that we're making in people's lives. For the first time, you're seeing people once again being able to express themselves. There's so many people that are on there that are like, oh, wow, I used to see you on Facebook years ago, right? And I think, and now they're back and and you see those conversations, right? They show up in my feed. And I think that's what keeps our team at Truth Social going. I mean, the president, you know, I mean, I always tell people this, the president didn't need a new company and I didn't need a new job. Like, we are specifically doing this to open the internet back up and give the American people their voices back.
Great mission.
And, you know, and I'll tell you, you know, we should take victory laps when we get them. And this is not being reported on, but this is really important. John Rich, country music singer, he came out with a song a couple weeks ago called Progress. Not one record label would carry that song. No country music stations would play the song. He launched it on Truth Social, put the video up on Rumble, and do you know that that song was #1 in the world for 2 weeks in a row?
Wow.
So it shows you that you know, we are the majority, and just imagine, you know, like once Truth Social is approved by Google, we're now in the Google Play Store, but only for pre-order. But, you know, think about once we're able to fully be out there, people can join. It's going to make a huge, huge difference. And I think with John Rich, it just proves it with his greatest hit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys, very quickly.
Yeah, I don't sleep, so that's part of the issue. No, I get up in the morning and I have this sick, compelling feeling to be the first person to cover an important story. And, you know, I'm lucky that I get to cover stories that I find important, and it's informed by my radio audience and my web audience. And I love that kind of freedom. So I'm the nerd who gets 1,000 documents from a public disclosure request. You're already falling asleep. But I actually go through all of it to see if there's a story here. And so if Devin ever puts in an email something he shouldn't, I'm like, ooh, I got a story. He won't do that, of course.
You know, I could talk about how I want to be remembered as my legacy as a reporter, but honestly, more than anything, I want people to see what I'm doing and hopefully be inspired and know that you're the only ones that can let yourself get canceled. I quit mainstream media, and I was the laughing stock in Florida. I had 500 followers on Facebook. You know, 2 years later, I'm over 100,000 on all my platforms now, and I have an entire team of reporters. And because I looked into the eyes of everyone, I said, no, you can't cancel me. You know, the only person I care about is God. That's the only one that I care about when it comes to my judgment of me. So what I did might have seemed crazy, but it's working. And your ideas, they might seem crazy at first. Someone might tell you they're crazy, but they're not. Follow your passion.
Absolutely. Well, as we just discussed, misleading information is as real as the impact it has on our lives. Unfortunately, it's threatening the most valuable things we have, our families, our freedom, and our democracy. So let's take a stand, keep fighting for the values that made this country great. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. And thank you, CPAC, for sparking the conversations that matter.